Hey guys, welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be solving the LeetCode question stream of characters. Alright, so in this question we need to implement stream checker, and that's going to be a class. So in that, our constructor is we're going to initialize the data structure with the given words. Okay, so for this class we're going to be given some words, right? Either one word or several words, and we need to add it or have them stored in some sort of data structure. And what we need to do with that is we're going to have a query, and what we need to do is we need to return true or false, and we're going to return true if and only if k greater than or equal to 1, the last k characters required. So in order from oldest to newest, including the letter just queried. Spell one of the words in the given list. Okay, so this statement over here is kind of confusing if you just look at it for the first time. So just go over it a few times and try to understand it. And if you don't, let me just show you what this actually means. So what we're going to do is we're going to have some words, right? So I'm just going to write down some words. So I'm going to have this word CD, then I'm going to have AB, and then I'm also going to have F. So these are the three words that we're given. And let's say I make a query finding for the word A, for the letter A. And if you go to our words over here, we have the letter A over here, but A is not the ending of a word. So in this case, we're actually just going to end up returning false. So similarly, now let's say we query for the letter F. And when we do that, we're actually going to end up returning true. And that's because F exists as a single letter, and it's the end of a word. F makes up an entire word. And now let's say we query for C, and as you can see, we do have C, so we're going to go there, but still it's not the end of the word. So it's still not the end of the word, so in that case, we're just going to return false. And we only return true, so now let's say we call D. So this is where what they told in the question makes sense. And D is over here, and what we're going to do is we're actually going to end up returning true. And why is that? So why are we returning true over here? Well, the reason for that is because we've called C before, so we can account for the C and we can add on the D. So think of this as CD. So just another example, let's say we queried for D in the very beginning. So up top here, the first thing we queried for was D, and in that case, we would actually get false because D exists, but in this case, we did not consider C. So if we called or queried for D in the very beginning before querying for C, we would end up with the result of false. So hopefully that makes sense. And now let's kind of talk about or think of how can we store all of these words. And as with most string-based questions, we're going to be using a try. So for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to go over what a try is really quickly. If you want an in-depth explanation of what it is and how you can use it, I made a complete video on that. Alright, so real quickly, our try is going to have a root node, and this root node is just think of it as a placeholder, it doesn't really have any value. So I'm going to have the same words as before, so let's have CD, let's have AB, and then let's have the letter F. Okay, so what I'm going to do to our try data structure is we're going to add each of these letters of the word. So first let's go to this word, so let's add this letter C, and to C we're going to connect that to D. And at the ending of each word, so to denote that, hey, we've reached the ending of a word, we're going to have another node called end. And all this end node is going to do is just going to kind of show that we've reached the ending of a word. So that means that, look, you've got one word. Okay, so similarly, we're going to have A, and then we're going to have B, and then we're going to have the end to denote that, well, it's the end. And similarly, we have F, and then we have end. Okay, so let's see how we can use this to our advantage. So what we're going to do in the beginning is think of these as being imaginary pointers. We're going to have a pointer at C, a pointer at A, and a pointer at F. And now let's start trying to make out our queries. So let's say we make a query for the letter C. And in this case, we do have C. So what we're going to do over here is we're first going to check whether any of the pointers have a value of C, or if any of the children have a value of C. And in this case, this has a value of C, right? But the thing is, this is not the ending of the word. And we know that because we don't have the end node. So in this case, even though we do have C, we're just going to end up returning false. And I just want to add one more thing for the purpose of this video. So let's say instead of AB, let's just make this ABC and then end. So instead of AB, this is going to be A, B, and C. Okay, so now let's say we want to query for B. So I'm going to do B over here. And well, we do have a value of B over here, but we don't have the ending node. So that means it's not the end of a letter. So what we're going to do in this case actually is we're going to add this as one of our nodes. So in the beginning, we just looked at C, A, and F as being our nodes. And now we're also going to add B. And well, what is the purpose of adding B to our nodes, right? So by adding B, we're basically telling it that we visited B, so we've added B, so we can check if there are any letters after that. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's say before doing that, let's first query for, let's say, F. And if I query for F, well, I'm going to end up getting true because we have the end node. So this is going to be true. And now let's say I query for the letter C. So just remember that when we queried for C in the very beginning, we only had one instance of it, which was over here, right? The C, which was over here. But now we have two of them. So we have the C over here, and obviously that's not going to be one of our answers. And the other one we have is the C, which is over here, and it has an end node with it. So this means that we've found a word, and that so this means that we've found the entire word. And this is why we added B to our nodes. And if we did not add B to our nodes, we would not have reached to C. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to iterate through this. Each time we find a children node, we're going to add that to some sort of nodes list. And from our next iterations, we're going to check the value of those nodes as well. So in this case, first we check this C, and we're also going to check over here since C is a child of B. And since that is the ending, we're going to end up returning true. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. I don't think it's too complicated. And now let's go into the code part of the question. All right, so over here we have our code, and we're going to start off by initializing our data structure, right? Which in this case is going to be a tree. So what I did in the beginning is I created an external class called try. And for some reason, when I was doing that, it kept giving me a time exceeded error. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to initialize it directly inside of our init method. Okay, so how are we going to be storing it? Well, I'm just going to be using a dictionary to store it. And you could use the default dictionary from collections, and that is actually going to be faster. But for this video, I want to keep it simple and just use all the inbuilt Python functions. Okay, so self.try, right? And over here, we're going to store our try data structure. And let's initialize it with a dictionary, right? Empty dictionary. And now what we need to do is we need to iterate through each of the words. So for word in words. So now we're going through each of the words. And after that, to our try, we need to add each of the characters of each word. So to do that, I'll just do for char in word. Okay, so now we have each character of each word. And before we do that, so right after our word in words for statement, we're going to have a node, right? And each time we're adding, so let me just go back to our sketchbook. Okay, so over here, so one thing that we should note over here is that each time we have a new letter, a new beginning letter, we're gonna have a new node. So let's say we have the letter Z, ZC, right? So then we're gonna add Z, and then we're going to add C, right? So each time we're gonna start off from our root. And I want to add something which I didn't add earlier. So let's say we have ZC and we also have ZA. So what we're going to do is we're going to do ZC and it's going to be end. And we're from Z, so since Z already exists from the root, we're going to make another node starting from Z to A directly. So we don't have to make another node with Z. Okay, so now let's go back to our code and let's initialize our node. So this is going to be where our starting point is. And well, it's obviously going to start off from our self.try, right? The original try that we first defined. Okay, self.try. Okay, so now that we have this, we're going to check whether our character already exists inside of our try. So if char not in node, so in the case that it is not in our node, then we're going to add it as to our node, and we're going to give it an empty dictionary. So node char is equal to empty dictionary. Okay, and at the ending, we're going to change the value of our node. So let's say our node in the beginning, it's the root. And now let's say we had the letter C. So we're going to change our node from root to C. That's all we're doing. Okay, so node is going to be equal to node char. Okay, so we have that. And now we're going to iterate through each of the letters. And at the ending, so once we've reached the last letter for a certain word, we need to add our end node, right? So I'm going to do that. So node end, and you can give it any value actually. It doesn't really matter, so I'll just set it to true. Okay, and so now over here, we're iterating through each word. And once we add all of the characters, we're going to add the end node to denote that it's the ending of a word. And then we're going to repeat this for each of the words inside of our words list. Okay, and that should be it for our constructor method. And over here, now let's go to our query. So what our first step is going to be is we're actually going to define something called self.nodes. And what this is going to hold, it's going to hold all the nodes that we need to visit. And I'm going to be defining this inside of our constructor. So it's just going to be an empty list. And the reason I'm doing it inside of this constructor is so that we can add values to it and it can store those values without resetting each time we call the query. So we're going to start off by adding our try to our self.nodes. So self.nodes.append, and what are we going to append? Well, we're going to append our try. So self.try. Okay, and over here we're going to have a variable. So I'll just call it temp, and it's going to be holding our answer. So it's going to start off with the value of false, and if we do change it, we're going to change it to true, and we're just going to end up returning whatever temp is. And the reason we're using a temporary variable instead of just returning the value directly will be clear really soon. Okay, so now we have our nodes, and in the beginning, the nodes that we have for sure are whatever are in the beginning directly corrected to our root. So we have that for sure, but each time we might be adding more nodes that we need to visit. So we won't just be having one list, right? So what we need to do, we need to iterate through all of our nodes. So for node and nodes, right? So now we're iterating through all of the nodes, and actually this is supposed to be self.nodes. All right, and over here we're gonna check if our letter, so where are we getting letter from? Well, we're getting the letter from here. So if letter is in nodes, so if letter in nodes, so if we end up going inside of this if statement, we have one of two conditions. So one of them is when we have something like B. So in that case, what that means is we found a letter, so we're just going to add that to our nodes. And the second condition we have is that we found a letter and it is also the ending of a word. So let's just look at both those conditions. So I'm going to store this inside of a temporary variable called node. And this is just going to be node and whatever letter we are at. And why do we need this? Well, we need this because we're going to add this to our new nodes list. So new nodes.append, and we're going to add this node. And the reason we're adding this node is because, well, we found that letter. So now what we're going to do is we're going to check whether the letter we found is the ending of a word. So to do that, all we need to do is we need to check if end is in our node. And if it is inside a node, well, that means that we've reached the ending, and we're going to change our temporary variable to true. And all that means is that we found an answer and we found the ending of a word, and we're just going to return true. And instead of doing that, well, you might be thinking, why couldn't we just return true over here? And the answer to that is because if you do that, you won't be able to add all the instances of the word to our new nodes list. Okay, so after we have new nodes over here, so after we're done iterating through all the nodes, we need to add, so self.nodes, and we're going to change its value to the new nodes. And over here, we're changing the value of self.nodes and we're initializing it with that of new nodes. So in that case, for the next iteration, we will be having these values along with the self.try values to check whether we have a word or not. Okay, and finally, we're just going to end up returning our temporary variable, and that should be it. So let's submit our solution. And okay, runtime error. So the mistakes over here. So if letter in node, so it's not supposed to be nodes. So we just want to look at that single node. My bad. Hit submit. All right, so finally our submission was accepted. And finally, thanks a lot for watching, guys. Do let me know if you have any questions, and don't forget to like and subscribe if this video helped you. Thank you.